On the morning of the third day, I took a mission to recover some supplies to the trader. The map he gave me took me on a difficult and perilous trek through mountainous terrain. At one point, I even had to dig my way up the hillside in order to make safe steps to climb. However, I was ultimately rewarded with a spectacular view down over a desert oasis. The descent was, if anything, more dangerous, and to be honest, it's a miracle I didn't break a limb. At the bottom, I was rewarded with a swimming zombie, a snake, another zombie, and, of course, need you ask, a vulture. Of course, the real reward was to bathe in that cool, sweet water. It was then that I discovered that the map he had given me was out of date, and that there was, in fact, a back road leading almost directly to the trader. It was at this point that I debated with myself the ethics of emptying an entire magazine of ammunition into his face. After a couple of days gathering resources, by day 6 I had managed to set myself up with a passable forge and workbench. The goal for day 6, though, was to gather materials and mechanical parts to build some form of vehicle, as I fear my lack of physical prowess may otherwise get me killed. I also noticed that there was another survivor who was set up in a building nearby. I suggest that he may be, in many ways, my complete opposite, a big brute of a man, and yet I'm sure better equipped to survive than I am. The first time I saw him, he killed 2 zombies with a single swipe of his baseball bat, taking the head off one and knocking down the other. And yet in him I did not see cruelty, malice, or enjoyment of violence. There was a sadness in his demeanour, his actions an act of mercy, not of anger or hatred. I decided then that I need to befriend this individual. I need his help, his company, and his humanity. I have a mission, but he has the equipment to help me fulfill it. I left him a note saying that I was trying to set up a lab, and that I would perhaps make bandages and other equipment for him. I also warned him that the 7th day would bring with it more horrors. Here I feel I have more explaining to do. I've told in previous chapters of my research. I've told how I was tricked and nearly killed by the Kage848 Corporation. They are evil, and they are undoubtedly to blame. But there are other factors which they could not possibly have anticipated. And so we turn to the moon, and another group of brilliant scientists doing things that they consider to be safe and in the best interests of humanity. The younger in our society may not remember the days when the lunar day used to match the lunar month. They may not understand the concept that the moon had a dark side that could never be seen from the Earth. Soon after the initial settlements on the moon were established, they set about a process to decouple what is called tidal locking, to shorten the duration of the lunar day, increase its speed of rotation on its axis. They also sought to create some sort of weak magnetosphere to help protect the surface from solar radiation. Of course, shortening the lunar day also had the advantage of making mining possible across almost the entire surface of the moon. So how did they achieve this extraordinary feat? To begin with, they installed fusion reactors at both poles. Then they burrowed deep and embedded huge superconducting coils below the surface. Into these, they periodically injected current. Each lunar day, precisely the same point in time. They reversed the direction of flow at both poles and injected a new surge of current. Think of it like a yo-yo, tweaking the string at just the right moment in time, reversing the direction of spin. Over decades, slowly, they increased the speed of spin of the moon and shortened its day down to the 7 days with which we are now familiar. Each cycle, they had to be careful not to inject too much power into the coils lest they overheat and lose their superconducting properties. Hence the reactors were only active for a few hours in each lunar cycle. All the time, slowly, they were creating a magnetic field running from pole to pole. And then they were ready for the next stage. This involved the use of magnetized flakes comprising various metal silicates and hematite. These were ejected from one pole using the force of the magnetic field to float slowly through the lunar sky to the other pole. The following cycle, when the magnetic field was reversed, the magnetized flakes would float back. It is the hematite in these particles that gives the moon its red color. As the power surge each cycle ejects them high into the lunar sky. The silicates help to block and reflect harmful solar radiation. And so they sought to transform the moon. But little did they know, in so doing, they were also impacting the Earth's magnetosphere. There was a small increase in radiation at the surface. Radiation of exactly the right frequency to activate the virus. And so there came about a perfect storm that none of us could have anticipated. And those fusion reactors on the moon keep pumping charge each 7 days into those superconducting coils. And each 7 days, the levels of radiation will increase upon the Earth's surface. And the strength and ferocity of the zombies will grow with it. And so I labour now. But even after a few days, I'm tired and intimidated by the enormity of the task I have before me. To find some way of shutting down that lunar cycle, of closing down those reactors. And at the same time, here, I must find a way to counter the virus and give us hope.
Yeah, what do you want?
Damn, this guy doesn't make it any easier.